Welcome to Exhibition. And hello, Peter Wegner.
Hello, Richard.
Great to see you again and in your studio. And in fact, the title of your exhibition is Paintings in the Studio at Australian Galleries in Melbourne. And how would you describe the relationship that you have with your studio?
It's like a bit of meditation, really. I think the studio is it's the place of comfort. It's the one place that you can come into and just keep working. The thing about the studio I always find is my time goes so fast. When I'm here, it's like I'd been here for 5 hours, and then I go outside and look at my watch and I think, oh my goodness, I've been here for about 2 hours or an hour. I just find that I can see what it's like when you're so absorbed with your work.
We can see it very much is a place of your work because we can see part of a work behind you, but also very much a place of thinking and reading by
Yeah,
virtue of the books we can see.
yeah. I mean, I'm a bit of a book collector, and I just love looking at images. And I've got images. I I refer to images a lot,
Mm.
and the books I like. I mean, they vary from a huge range from art education books, a bit of philosophy, a bit of poetry. I enjoy that, and I've got a lot of armchairs to rest and have a bit of a read too.
Can you describe your studio to us? We can only see a small part of it.
It's a purpose-built studio, and I'm tucked into the bush where we are here in Diamond Creek, and it's quite well. It's reasonably large. It's about 10 meters by 8 meters, with a very high ceiling. And one end's a bookcase. Oh, sorry, my books at one end, and I have a light on top. Actually, I often paint through natural light, but a lot of the paintings from that exhibition were actually painted with a light above me, which is the one that's above now. And the reason for that is I can paint during the day, and then I can come back at night and I can still continue with the same light source, because the light is just so important in what I do.
Mm.
And I have to have that. I'm actually painting light in an odd sort of way. I'm painting the surface, I'm painting the structure, I'm painting the way the light folds around an armchair or folds around a pillow or something that I've got. So it's the light that I'm actually painting.
You mentioned the armchairs, and this exhibition certainly does have some chairs, some
Mm,
couches,
yeah,
and they have been something you've been painting for many years now.
yeah,
What's the attraction?
yeah.
What's the compulsion?
Um, well, it sort of goes back a long way. I've always been fascinated with chairs. In fact, what fascinates me about a chair is the history of that person that sits in that chair, and the patina and the marks and the scratches and just the body of that person that has been there or is there. So chairs become like a possession in an odd sort of way. They belong to somebody. And all the chairs I've painted and the couches, I often think of the history of the people who've sat in them and who have been there.
And do you know the people who have sat in the chairs or on the couches of this exhibition that we see?
Um, well, actually, they've been around for a long time, so they've had a lot of use. And there's a lot of Graham Doyle in these chairs, my muse of many years. And there's a lot of a lot of people who have sat in the chairs.
You mentioned Graham Doyle, who you've painted many times
Mm,
over the
mm,
years,
mm.
and in fact, it was a portrait of Graham in one of your chairs that won the Moran Prize some
Mm,
years ago. So you do
yeah.
seem to have a real sense of continuity with not only the chairs, but sometimes people as well.
Yes, yeah. I mean, Graham's been fantastic, that relationship I have with him over the years. And I mean, that actually chair's gone now. It's no longer with us. But in a way, there's a couple of chairs there which Graham has sat in for a long time, and it's like the absence of the person in the chair. In fact, I often think that the chairs are like portraits themselves. That they're portraits of a chair, and when you look at that chair, and you can just see that someone easily could have sat in that chair. It's a really nice. I don't know. It's just when I look at a chair, and even when I go into people's houses now, I'm eyeing off chairs and just thinking, gee, that's a beautiful chair. Wow. The history is full of people sitting in chairs, of course. In fact, it was Bullard who said that the most important part of he said the most important piece of equipment in an artist studio is the chair, and that's because you just sit in it and you just look at what you're doing. You know, I mean, I've got a chair I've used here for ages that when I'm doing a painting, I'll sit back and just sit in that chair and just have a look at what I'm doing.
Some of your chairs have had a very long lifespan indeed. And in fact, one of them, for quite some time now, while you've been painting it, has been really quite significantly damaged, sort of decomposing almost.
Yeah.
What's the attraction of that really knocked around chair for you?
Again, it's that way something deteriorates. And I've had that chair for maybe 10 years, and that chair's deteriorated in the process of people sitting in it. And I just like that time capsule that you actually, every time you paint it, it's a little bit further deteriorated. And I'm following the history of that chair just purely by the wear and tear and the way people sit in that chair. You know, they're beautiful things to paint, especially that leather. That one leather chair actually is the one. Every time I have a show, I just like to have one of those paintings in it. In fact, I think it'd make a really good show, an exhibition of that one chair. Like I'd hate to have anything done to it to repair it, because it's just I'd just destroy all the patina and the life of it and the history of it and the marks of it.
You mentioned painting light.
Yes.
On the surface of the chairs or the couches. That's really what you're interested in, that sense of their surface.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of a sense of how you see the light-coloured couch and the much darker covered couch. Do they have, in a sense, different light personalities for you?
Yeah, I mean, the palette's different. And in that brown couch, look, I just loved painting that brown couch with the way what I used a lot of wax in my painting. At the moment, I'm using wax, and the wax builds up this beautiful surface. It's a lovely surface wax. Wax also means you can paint on it a la primer for much longer. And I can come back the next day and it's still wet, and I can then push the paint around. But that brown couch, I just love those beautiful brown, and you put a bit of crimson into the paint, and you can the couch isn't brown; it's got so many other colours in it. Yeah, and it's just so beautiful. I mean, really, my paintings are about paint as much as they are about the subject, because in fact, you could almost have. You know, you could be painting anything, but the painting itself has to work. Like the couches are a vehicle to be wanting to put paint on and push it around.
As you're applying the paint and looking at the couch or the chair, whatever the surface happens to be, are you actually using the paint as almost another sense to discover what the surface of the object that you're looking at is?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I often think that if I had have used another medium on that couch, it'd be a totally different tactile feeling to it. It's the paint is the most important part of that. Even though my work never represents the people I admire, and I mean, I look at the de Koonings, I just think, wow, isn't that beautiful? I mean, that's those paintings. That paint is delicious, really. And I mean, I'm a favourite of the British school, and I really enjoy those Albarks as well, where he scrubs out, rubs back, scrubs out, rubs back. And he's probably not aware, but there's those paintings look very alla prima, but in fact, I've scraped back and I work back, scrape back, work back, and I'm after something that's fresh, but it's taken a long time to get that freshness.
There have been chairs and couches, but also there are rugs, beautiful rugs on the walls and on the floors in many of your paintings over the years. Again, what's the attraction of that often quite formal pattern structure?
I've been buying Persian rugs for ages, and I just love that beautiful craftsmanship in the rug and the patterns themselves. I just think it's just such a beautiful backdrop to the contrast of the couch themselves. But I mean, I just think of Matisse used Persian rugs. Lots of people use Persian rugs, and I'm not sure of the significance, but I do know that a beautiful aesthetic exists between it. There's a nice dialogue between the couch and the rugs. Yeah.
We've spoken about couches, about rugs, about chairs, but of course, there is also the human form and the human figure. And there is part of a nude work behind you in the studio at the moment, which is part of the exhibition catalogue, but not actually hanging in the gallery.
Yeah.
How do you approach painting the figure in your studio?
Well, everything's done from life. I never paint from a photograph. I just love that idea that I'm got a person in front of me, and the paintings, like this large one at the back, they're long. They take me a long time, and that's probably about. And I employ my model for up to 5 hours a day. That's my usual, because I always find it's much better to spend 5 hours painting than 2 hours painting. I just go into it. But I do enjoy painting the model in the studio with the light that I've got. Again, it's about painting light. And again, she's in one of those chairs that I quite like.
So in a sense, she and the chair now have a shared history, which will be part of the chair's history if you paint the chair in the future by itself.
Yeah, well, actually, there's a painting of that chair in the show, and it's a portrait of the chair without Fiona, of course. But I tell you how that happened. She was sitting in the chair, and there was a Persian carpet behind it. It was all set up, and then she left, and then I came back into the studio, and it was like there was the painting there was the painting there without my model, and the weight of the chair, the weight of how someone sits on the chair when someone moves and gets up from it, and it's all that presence is still there. So that's how that big painting in the show started. Again, I've just used a lot of paint on this painting. It's quite, it's worked back in and scraped back in. And also, though, Richard, in that exhibition is a suite of drawings as well. I've been working on these Centenarian drawings for a long time, and part of that, so I decided to put in about 35 drawings of the Centenarians.
Can you give us a little bit more detail about that project? Because I know it's one that you've been working on now for quite a number of years.
Yes. Yeah.
Explain to us just a little about what's involved in your Centenarian drawings.
Yeah. I should say that they started about 6 years ago. My Auntie Rita lived to 104. And even so, she was still living independently by herself at 104. So, and when I was painting her, I started painting her at 100, or drawing her at 100. And I thought, there must be a lot of other people living independently and still living productive lives at 100. And I've probably done about 90 at the moment. Got up to heading towards 100 actually, obviously. But I spent an afternoon with the people, with the Centenarians, and in a way, I'm finding out about their life, and I talk to them, and I ask them to sit. Well, they sit down, and I never ask anybody to pose for me. But for me, I just ask them. I just come in and I say, we're having a chat for an afternoon, and it's so easy, and people move, and I love that idea because when they move, I rub their hands out and do it again, And then I've got the history of those hands, and there's mark making underneath there, which I really love when you've got marks that are part of that drawing. So, so the drawings are made up of 2-3 hours of different moments, but I concentrate on the hands and I concentrate on the face.
Is there a particular reason that you choose to use drawing as a medium for most of these centenarian portraits?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm a real advocate for drawing. So drawing to such a beautiful mark making, it's in us as human beings that we want to draw or make marks. I just always think of that. I just think drawing is just a beautiful medium. I should say too that I've used a pencil which I really love to use, one particular. It's a blue-grey pencil, and that connects the drawings together. They're all the same size. They're all done with the same pencil, and they're actually dipped into beeswax, which is another little extension of what I'm doing.
Let's conclude by coming back to your studio, the space which is the primary focus for this exhibition. And you've explained about the chairs and the couches and the occasional human sitters, but I wonder if you can, in a way, paint us a little portrait of you alone in your studio looking around it. How do you feel about those chairs and couches and memories surrounding you in your studio?
Yeah, I always find there's a great solace being in the studio, and not all of my work is chairs, but this series does make a statement about where we want to sit in our life, I suppose. And when people come and they've got a few chairs to choose from when they sit in, I often say, well, what chair would you like to sit in? I actually like when someone sits for me. I always want there's a participation in the painting itself between them as well. That I never ask people to pose for portraits. To ask them to pose is like orchestrating too much. It's just, you've got to be fairly relaxed about sitting in one of my chairs.
Well, it's been great to spend time in your studio with you. So, Peter Wegner, thanks very much for sharing that studio and your exhibition with us.
Oh, thanks very much, Richard. It's been a pleasure.